A summary of the story of Ruth. Part 2. After Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem, they needed food. Ruth said, "Let me go into the barley fields to pick up the leftover grain." The poor were allowed to pick up grain that the harvesters had left on the ground. Naomi replied, "Go ahead, my daughter." Ruth went into the fields belonging to Boaz. Boaz was a relative of Naomi's dead husband Elimelech. Later Boaz arrived and greeted the harvesters and said, "The Lord be with you." The harvesters replied, "The Lord bless you." Boaz noticed Ruth collecting grain with the poor. He asked the man in charge of the harvesting, "Who is that woman?" He answered, "She is the Moabite who returned with Naomi. She asked permission to pick up grain and has been working hard." Boaz went to Ruth and said, "Stay in these fields with the women who work for me. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you. When you get thirsty, help yourself to the water jars the men have filled." Ruth bowed down before Boaz and asked, "Why are you treating a foreigner so kindly?" Boaz answered, "I have been told how you have cared for Naomi." Ruth said, "May God, under whose wings you have taken refuge, richly reward you. Even though I am lower than one of your servants, you have spoken kindly to me and put me at my ease." At mealtime, Boaz invited her to eat with the other harvesters. He said, "Have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." He offered her roasted grain, and Ruth ate all she wanted. When Ruth got up to continue working, Boaz gave secret orders to his men. He told them, "Let her gather among the sheaves without telling her off. Even pull out some stalks from the bundles and drop them for her to gather." Ruth busily gathered grain until the evening. Ruth threshed the barley she had gathered and took it home to Naomi. It was a large amount, about 30 pounds. She also brought Naomi the food left over from the meal she had with Boaz and the harvesters. Naomi asked, "Where did you gather grain today? Who is the man who has been kind to you?" Ruth replied, "Boaz." Naomi said, "The Lord bless him. He is a close relative we know as a guardian redeemer. He has an obligation to look after a relative who is in need." From that point on, Ruth continued gathering grain in the fields belonging to Boaz. She stayed close to the other women gathering grain, knowing she would be safe. She worked hard in the barley harvest and then in the wheat harvest that followed, making sure that Naomi had enough food to eat.